when the human she married released his true strength, the alien. The grand hall of the Zarian embassy glittered under the soft glow of floating crystal lights. Every surface shimmered with a metallic sheen that humans would have called impossible to clean, and every alien guest moved with a grace that Ethan found both mesmerizing and intimidating. He adjusted his simple black suit for the third time, trying to fit in among beings whose skin shimmered in colors he had never seen, and whose eyes seemed to see far more than his own. He wasn't supposed to be the center of attention. After all, he was just human, a species known throughout the galaxy as fragile, predictable, and according to some aliens, easily outmatched. Yet here he was, standing next to Lyra, his wife, a tall, elegant alien diplomat whose reputation spanned star systems. The marriage had been arranged for political reasons. The union of a human and a Zarian would symbolize peace, alliance, and progress between two very different civilizations. Lyra noticed Ethan's nervous posture and offered him a reassuring smile. Her skin, a soft shade of silver, glimmered under the hall's lights. "Relax," she whispered, her voice melodic. "They're curious about you, not dangerous. Yet." Ethan swallowed, trying to steady himself. He had spent months studying alien etiquette, but theory and practice were two different things. Every time someone approached, he had to guess whether to bow, nod, or remain completely still. The wrong gesture could be insulting, or worse. The first guest approached, a tall Zarian man with arms that seemed to bend in impossible directions. He extended 3 fingers toward Ethan. Ethan hesitated. He had seen Lyra perform this gesture countless times, but only once had she explained it. It's like a handshake, but with respect and acknowledgement of their personal space. Ethan mirrored her movement, lifting his hand in an awkward but accurate 3-fingered salute. The alien's eyes widened, a hint of surprise flickering across his features before he spoke in a language Ethan didn't understand. Lyra translated softly. "He says humans are supposed to be weak. He did not expect you to match the gesture so precisely." Ethan shrugged. "Old reflexes," he said, trying to sound casual. Lyra chuckled softly, squeezing his hand. "You'll do fine," she whispered. As the evening progressed, Ethan became more comfortable. He smiled politely, answered questions, and even found himself laughing at the peculiar humor of some of the younger aliens. But despite the light-hearted moments, he noticed the subtle glances and whispers directed at him. Humans were rare in these circles. They were considered primitive, curious, clever perhaps, but never a match for an advanced species like the Zarians. Then came the demonstration. A group of alien dignitaries had gathered in a separate chamber to show off a new security drone designed to test combat readiness. The drone hovered silently, its sleek metallic body reflecting the hall lights. It could move faster than any human eye could track, and it had a simulated energy weapon that could incapacitate a target with a harmless but firm shock. The Zarian general in charge of the demonstration smiled at the audience. "Let's see how a human fares," he said, his tone almost amused. "No species has ever managed to touch the drone for more than a few seconds. This should be interesting." Ethan's stomach tightened. Lyra squeezed his hand, offering a brief, confident nod. "Remember what I taught you," she whispered. "Observe, predict, move when it's right." He nodded. The doors opened and the drone darted out like a silver lightning bolt. The general activated its program. In an instant, it moved toward Ethan, faster than anything he had ever seen. He held his ground, studying its movements, noticing patterns in its oscillation and the brief pauses between attacks. Then Ethan moved, not too fast, not too slow. Each step was calculated, every dodge precise. The drone fired repeatedly, but Ethan predicted its trajectory almost instinctively, sidestepping and ducking with astonishing accuracy. A hand reached out, touched the drone's metallic arm and pushed it aside gently, destabilizing it for just a fraction of a second, but enough. The room went silent. No human had ever done this. The drones were designed to test advanced aliens, let alone humans. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Lyra's eyes widened, her hand gripping Ethan's a little tighter. "Remarkable," she said softly. The drone whirred and recalibrated, launching a series of rapid movements. Ethan's senses sharpened. He noticed tiny sounds, vibrations in the floor, and subtle visual cues that no alien, so far removed from human senses, seemed able to detect. Every step he took was in perfect timing. Every move disrupted the drone's rhythm. Finally, the drone came to a halt, blinking in confusion, its energy core flickering. Ethan stood straight, breathing evenly, as if the entire display had been nothing more than a casual exercise. The alien general stared at him, mouth slightly open. "You human," the general stammered, struggling for words. "No, no human has ever," Ethan shrugged politely. "Just observing patterns," he said simply. Lyra's heart swelled with pride. She had suspected humans were underestimated, but this was beyond what even she had imagined. The audience, once skeptical, now watched with a mixture of awe and disbelief. A human had outperformed a machine designed for the galaxy's most advanced species. The evening ended with applause, hesitant at first, then growing louder as more aliens realized the significance. Ethan, still calm, moved back to Lyra's side. She looked at him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "You didn't even try to show off," she said softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "I wasn't showing off, I was surviving." Her eyes narrowed, studying him. Surviving and already outmatching them. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. His performance had spoken for him. Later that night, as they walked through the quiet corridors of the embassy, Ethan's mind was already working. He had felt the limitations of alien technology and realized the potential vulnerabilities of even their most advanced systems. He wasn't thinking about glory or recognition. He was thinking strategically, already planning how to protect Lyra and navigate this world that had assumed humans were inferior. Lyra, meanwhile, couldn't stop thinking about the evening's events. She had married him expecting a partner who was clever and human, yes, but not a force capable of reshaping her understanding of strength and intelligence. She realized that in Ethan she hadn't just married a human, she had married an entirely new kind of power, one that the galaxy would soon have to recognize. As they entered their private quarters, Lyra paused, looking at him seriously. "You realize what just happened?" Ethan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "They learned humans aren't as weak as they thought." Lyra shook her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "That's putting it lightly. They probably think you're something more than human now." Ethan chuckled softly. "Then let them think. The important thing is that no one underestimates us. That includes them." Lyra felt a shiver of anticipation. If tonight was any indication, her life with Ethan would be nothing short of extraordinary. He was a human, yes, but humans had always survived against the odds, had always adapted. And with him by her side, she began to understand that perhaps humans weren't just surviving. They were capable of becoming something the galaxy had never seen. Outside, the embassy hummed quietly with alien voices, unaware that a human had already changed the perception of an entire species in a single evening. Ethan stood at the window, looking at the stars, his mind calm, alert, and calculating. He wasn't just a guest in this alien world. He was a force, one that had only just begun to awaken. And as Lyra watched him, a thought struck her, one that both excited and terrified her. The universe had no idea what they were about to witness. The morning light spilled across the embassy gardens, casting long shadows over plants that shimmered in colors Ethan had no names for. The air smelled faintly metallic, yet fresh, and soft hums of alien technology mingled with the distant sounds of alien birds. Ethan walked beside Lyra, who moved gracefully, her silver skin catching the sunlight. Despite the serene environment, Ethan felt a tension under the surface, one that he couldn't ignore. The events of last night had spread faster than he imagined. Word of his display with the drone had reached even the corridors he had not entered. Whispers followed him wherever he went. Alien officials looked at him with curiosity, some with admiration, and others with something that Ethan recognized from Earth, fear. Lyra noticed it immediately. "They're unsettled," she said quietly, keeping her voice low so only Ethan could hear. "Not because you're human, but because you're different. They weren't expecting that kind of strength." Ethan glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. "Different?" he asked, amused but cautious. "I just did what any human would do in my position: observe, react, survive." Lyra shook her head, smiling faintly. "Humans, yes, but not like you. They won't understand it, and I'm not sure they'll forgive it either." The two walked through the garden, past tall crystalline structures that pulsed faintly, like they were alive. Ethan observed everything. The way the pathways curved subtly, the pattern of shadows, the soft vibration beneath the ground. Details that no alien seemed to notice but that humans could sense instinctively. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion near the embassy's main hall. A group of alien officials had gathered, speaking rapidly in a language Ethan didn't understand. Lyra immediately took his hand, guiding him closer. "Something is happening," she said. From the edge of the gathering, Ethan saw why. A smaller alien, younger than most, with sharp eyes and greenish-gold skin, was trying to demonstrate a piece of technology, a personal energy shield. The device was new, experimental, and notoriously difficult to activate properly. It had failed for every high-ranking Zarian tested so far. The young alien noticed Ethan and froze. Lyra leaned toward him. "Don't interfere, just watch." Ethan nodded, but his eyes stayed sharp. The shield activated, flickering briefly, and then failed. Sparks flew, and the device almost collapsed under its own energy. The audience murmured in disappointment. Ethan took a small step forward. Without thinking too much, he analyzed the device with human intuition, a combination of observation, logic, and pattern recognition. His hands hovered over the shield, careful not to touch, merely guiding. In a few seconds, he identified a small misalignment in the device's energy core. "Here," he said softly, pointing. The young alien adjusted the core slightly. The shield hummed, glowing steadily, stabilizing for the first time. The room went silent again. Whispers erupted. Even Lyra looked impressed. Ethan hadn't touched the device, yet he had fixed it with nothing but observation and insight. "You human," one of the senior officials said, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. "How did you?" Ethan shrugged. "I just looked." Lyra's grip on his hand tightened. "You're making them realize humans can think differently. That's dangerous to their pride." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe they need a little humility." Later, in the private study of the embassy, Lyra and Ethan reviewed the schedule for the day. It was packed with meetings, political briefings, and ceremonial events, yet the air was thick with unspoken tension. Ethan noticed subtle shifts in the behavior of the staff, glances exchanged, slight hesitation in greetings, eyes narrowing when he passed. "They're trying to figure you out," Lyra said, almost as if reading his mind. "No human has ever been in this position before. And you're not just surviving, you're forcing them to see humans as something more." Ethan leaned back, thoughtful. "Humans survive by adapting. We learn quickly, see patterns, and act when it matters. That's all I've done." Lyra studied him closely. "It's more than that. You inspire fear, not just respect, but fear. That's something they've never seen from a human before." The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. An assistant had arrived with a message for Lyra. She read it quickly, her expression tightening. "There's a formal request from the council," she said, handing the message to Ethan. He read it carefully. The council wanted him to undergo a test of skill and intelligence, a challenge meant for advanced Zarians only. It was supposedly harmless, a ceremonial demonstration of ability. But Ethan could tell from the tone that it was also a test of boundaries, a subtle way to gauge whether he was a threat. Lyra looked at him, concern flickering in her eyes. "You could refuse," she said softly. "It's not mandatory." Ethan shook his head. "Refusing would send the wrong message. If I don't show them what humans can do, they'll continue to underestimate and maybe even challenge us in ways we can't predict." She nodded reluctantly. "Then we face it together." The council chamber was massive, stretching high into the embassy's ceiling, which shimmered like liquid silver. Dozens of officials were seated in floating chairs, eyes fixed on Ethan as he stepped forward. The challenge began with complex puzzles, intricate devices, and simulations meant to test cognitive speed and problem-solving. Aliens watched closely, murmuring among themselves. Ethan moved through each task with careful precision. He solved the puzzles not by brute force, but by intuition and analysis. Where the devices relied on rigid logic, he thought flexibly, seeing solutions no alien had anticipated. Each success brought gasps, each correct answer widened the gap between human potential and alien expectation. But the real test came with a simulation of a crisis, a collapsing station orbiting a distant planet. Ethan had to make rapid decisions to save thousands of lives while managing a failing system of controls. Aliens around him murmured in disbelief as he worked, rerouting power, stabilizing the station, and predicting chain reactions faster than the simulation could react. When the exercise ended, the station stabilized. Ethan stood calm, sweat barely noticeable, his eyes focused but serene. The chamber erupted, not with applause but with stunned silence. Every alien present had seen what no human had done before. One senior official stepped forward. You, human, have accomplished what none of our species could. You are not just intelligent, you are, his voice faltered. You are extraordinary, Ethan smiled faintly. I'm just human, that's all. Lyra's hand found his again, squeezing lightly. Extraordinary indeed, she whispered. Even as the council tried to regain composure, subtle tensions rippled through the audience. Whispers grew louder, eyes narrowed. Some aliens were impressed, others unsettled. They had believed humans were fragile, predictable, and controllable. Now they weren't sure of anything. After the council meeting, Ethan and Lyra walked through the quiet corridors of the embassy. Ethan observed small things: the slight tremor of an alien guard's hand, the quick glance of a council member as they passed, the careful steps of a visitor who had underestimated him. Every detail added to his understanding of this world and the way it worked. Lyra studied him in silence, marveling at the human she had married. "You're changing everything," she said finally. "Not just their opinion of humans, but the balance here. You have power, but it's subtle, dangerous in a way they don't understand." Ethan paused, looking out over the embassy gardens from a high balcony. "I'm not doing it for power," he said softly. "I'm doing it for survival, for us, and for the chance to show them that humans are capable of more than they realize." Her eyes softened, admiration and affection mingling with concern. "And you're already proving it." That night, the stars outside the embassy seemed brighter, sharper. Ethan stayed at the window, watching distant ships move along predictable paths, analyzing their trajectories, imagining what could happen if humans were underestimated in a galaxy full of such power. He didn't feel fear. He felt anticipation. Lyra joined him silently, leaning against his shoulder. "They don't know what's coming," she said softly. Ethan smiled faintly, his gaze still on the stars. "Neither do we," he replied, but he knew. Humans survived against impossible odds, adapted where others failed, and thrived where others perished. And for the first time, he understood that the galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries. That mistake was about to cost them. And as the two stood together, watching the stars, the future of humans in the galaxy began to take shape. Not as weaklings, not as curiosities, but as something no alien had ever predicted. The next morning, the embassy buzzed with a tension that Ethan had not felt before. Whispers had spread further overnight. Aliens who had once ignored him now observed every movement with careful scrutiny. Some admired him quietly, but others, particularly the high-ranking military officials, watched with suspicion. Ethan could sense the subtle change in atmosphere as he walked through the corridors with Lyra at his side. "Something is brewing," Lyra said quietly, her silver eyes sharp with concern. "Last night's council session stirred things up. Some of them don't want to see humans rise." Ethan nodded. "I expected as much. The question is, how overt will they be?" They were walking toward the council chamber when an official intercepted them, a tall alien with dark, copper-colored skin and piercing yellow eyes. His movements were sharp, precise, almost predatory. Ethan noticed immediately that he carried an air of authority. Every step commanded attention. "You are Ethan of Earth," the alien said in measured tones. "I am General Krylos. I hear you have demonstrated unusual capabilities." Ethan nodded politely. "That seems to be the case." Krylos' lips twisted into a half-smile. "It is rare to see a human perform so well. Too rare, perhaps. I propose a test. A formal duel sanctioned by the council to measure your skill and strategic ability. You may refuse, but refusal will send a message about human confidence." Ethan considered the offer. He had faced challenges before, but never a duel sanctioned by an alien military general. It was an opportunity and a risk. Accepting could solidify humanity's place among the stars. Refusing could humiliate not only him, but Lyra and the humans she represented. "I accept," Ethan said firmly. "Not for pride, but to prove that humans can meet any challenge." Krylos' yellow eyes gleamed with something Ethan couldn't quite identify. "Very well. The duel will take place in 3 days. Prepare yourself." As Krylos departed, Lyra took Ethan's arm. "You don't know what you're up against. Krylos is not just skilled. He's considered one of the strongest in the galaxy. He doesn't underestimate anyone lightly." Ethan's gaze was calm. "I've survived worse. Humans adapt, Lyra. We learn, we adjust. That's what I'll do." For the next 2 days, Ethan trained, not just physically, but mentally. He studied Krylos' style from holographic simulations, noting patterns, tendencies, and weaknesses. He moved through exercises designed to push his speed, reflexes, and decision-making beyond normal limits. Every night, Lyra observed, offering guidance and support, often reminding him that subtlety could be more powerful than raw strength. On the day of the duel, the council chamber had been transformed into an arena. The audience included diplomats, military officers, and curious onlookers from other worlds. The chamber's walls were high, smooth, and reflective, and the floor was made of a material that could withstand the extreme movements of the duel. Krylos entered first, his presence commanding silence. He wore a ceremonial suit that emphasized both his muscular frame and his agility. His yellow eyes scanned the chamber, landing briefly on Ethan. A faint smile appeared, half amusement, half challenge. Ethan followed, calm and composed. Unlike Krylos, he wore simple attire, minimalistic and practical. There was no attempt to intimidate. His confidence came from preparation, not showmanship. The duel began with a signal from the council. Krylos moved first, his motions fluid, a blur of speed and precision. His attacks were calculated to test Ethan's reflexes, pushing him to react under pressure. Each movement was designed to exploit perceived human weaknesses, expecting slower reactions, limited agility, and predictable patterns. But Ethan was ready. He dodged, countered, and adapted with a combination of instinct and strategy. Where Krylos expected hesitation, he found precise timing. Where the general assumed brute strength would dominate, Ethan used agility and leverage to evade and redirect. The chamber echoed with the sounds of movement, energy impacts, and the subtle vibrations of the arena floor under rapid shifts in force. The audience watched in awe. Humans were expected to struggle in such a duel, yet Ethan moved with confidence and skill that rivaled Krylos' own. Each exchange grew more intense, faster, and more unpredictable. The duel was not just physical, it was mental. Ethan anticipated Krylos' strategies, countering even before they were fully executed. Lyra's heart raced as she observed from her seat. She had seen Ethan's capabilities in private moments, but this was on a scale she had never imagined. The general's movements were precise and deadly, but Ethan's adaptability and quick thinking kept him alive, not merely surviving but gaining ground. At one point, Krylos executed a maneuver designed to corner Ethan against the wall. The chamber shook with the force of the impact. Ethan's mind raced, analyzing the trajectory and calculating the best response. With a subtle shift in balance and a calculated use of Krylos' momentum, he turned the attack against the general, forcing Krylos to step back. The audience murmured in surprise. No human had ever resisted Krylos so effectively. "You are remarkable," Krylos said quietly, almost to himself. "Perhaps more than expected." Ethan did not respond. He maintained focus, knowing the duel was far from over. Krylos tested him again and again, each attempt more complex, each move pushing Ethan closer to his limits. But with every strike, every feint, Ethan adapted. He began to predict Krylos' patterns, subtle cues in posture and movement that even seasoned aliens often missed. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The intensity of the duel left both combatants breathing heavily, sweat and exertion marking their focus. And yet, neither yielded. It became clear to the audience that this was more than a duel. It was a demonstration of two forms of strength. One honed by centuries of alien training, the other shaped by human survival, ingenuity, and adaptability. Finally, Krylos attempted a decisive strike, a movement intended to end the duel. Ethan anticipated it, countering with a maneuver that used Krylos' momentum against him, disarming and destabilizing the general without causing harm. Krylos stumbled, eyes widening in realization. The chamber fell silent. Even the council seemed unable to process what had just happened. A human had not only survived Krylos' assault, but had demonstrated skill, reflexes, and strategy that rivaled one of the galaxy's most elite generals. Ethan stood calm, composed, and breathing evenly. Krylos straightened, a faint smile appearing on his lips. "You are extraordinary," he said again, this time with respect. "I misjudged you." Ethan nodded politely. "I am human," he said simply. "That's all." Lyra rushed forward, embracing Ethan gently. "You did it," she whispered, her voice full of pride and relief. "You showed them the truth about humans." Krylos watched, silent yet not defeated. There was a subtle shift in his expression, a mixture of respect, caution, and perhaps a warning. Ethan could sense it. The duel had proven his capabilities, but it had also marked him as someone to watch closely. The council convened afterward, discussing the implications of the duel. Humans could no longer be ignored. Their strength, adaptability, and ingenuity were undeniable. Aliens who had once dismissed humanity now debated how to treat them in future interactions. Later, in the quiet of their quarters, Ethan reflected on the duel. He had not sought victory for pride, nor had he aimed to humiliate Krylos. His goal had always been clear: survival, understanding, and proving that humans were capable of more than assumptions allowed. Lyra watched him thoughtfully. "You've changed everything," she said softly. "Not just for humans, but for the balance of power here. Do you realize what you've done?" Ethan met her gaze, calm and steady. "I've done what humans do best," he said. "We survive, we adapt, and we rise when needed." Outside, the stars glimmered as if acknowledging a new reality. Humans were no longer underestimated, no longer overlooked. The duel had sent a clear message. A human, underestimated and dismissed, could stand alongside the galaxy's strongest without faltering. But Ethan knew the challenge was not over. Krylos' respect was real, but it came with caution. Other forces would now pay attention to him, testing limits in ways he could not yet predict. And the human's place in the galaxy, fragile as it was, depended on constant vigilance, adaptation, and strategy. Lyra stood beside him, placing her hand on his shoulder. "What comes next?" she asked. Ethan looked toward the horizon, where distant stars hinted at countless worlds and civilizations. "We keep moving forward," he said. "We learn, we adapt, and we prove that humans are a force to be reckoned with. One duel doesn't change everything, but it's a start." Lyra smiled, a mixture of admiration and awe in her eyes. She knew that with Ethan by her side, the galaxy itself would soon witness the true potential of humanity. And as they stood together, the stars above seemed to shine brighter, signaling a future in which humans were no longer underestimated, no longer dismissed, and certainly no longer considered weak. The duel with Krylos had changed everything. Word of Ethan's performance had spread through the Zarian Council and beyond. Aliens from distant star systems spoke in hushed tones, questioning what they had once thought obvious: that humans were weak. Ethan's calm, deliberate victories had planted seeds of doubt, awe, and fear. Lyra and Ethan returned to their quarters after the council meeting. The corridors were quieter than usual, but Ethan could sense the subtle tension in the staff. Guards moved differently around him, some curious, others cautious, as if preparing for something they could not yet name. Lyra leaned against the balcony, her silver skin glowing under the ambient light. "The duel, it changed how they see us." "How they see you?" She paused, eyes narrowing. "Some of them aren't happy about it. You've made enemies, Ethan." Ethan nodded. "I expected that. Humans are underestimated, and when we exceed expectations, others feel threatened. That's natural." "Natural, yes," she said, her voice softer now. "But dangerous, too. You can't underestimate their pride or their persistence." Ethan's gaze shifted outward toward the city beyond the embassy. Ships glided silently through the skyways, and alien citizens moved with a rhythm and grace that still fascinated him. He had survived countless challenges on Earth, but this was a galaxy full of beings far stronger and faster than humans, and yet he had stood firm. "I know," he said quietly, "but humans have always adapted. We survive even when everything is against us. We learn, we think ahead, and we act when it matters." The next day, news reached them that a delegation from a neighboring star system had requested a private meeting. The delegation was composed of military strategists and diplomats, all curious about the human who had bested Krylos. Some came with questions, others with veiled threats. Ethan welcomed the challenge. In the delegation room, alien strategists presented simulations of large-scale conflicts, expecting Ethan to falter under complexity. He analyzed each scenario, pointing out weaknesses and predicting outcomes with uncanny accuracy. Where aliens relied on rigid tactics and centuries of tradition, Ethan used creativity and intuition. His solutions were unexpected, often using simple human logic to solve problems that advanced civilizations struggled with. By the end of the session, the delegation sat in stunned silence. Some frowned, realizing that humans, underestimated and overlooked, could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Others whispered in disbelief, wondering if humanity had been hiding all this potential for centuries. Lyra watched Ethan throughout the meeting, her admiration growing with each passing moment. "They thought they could intimidate you," she said after the delegation left. "Instead, you've shown them they underestimated humans." Ethan smiled faintly. "It's not about intimidation, it's about understanding. Humans survive because we can see solutions others overlook." But not all attention was friendly. Krylos, while respectful, remained cautious. Reports suggested that some factions within the council were uneasy, worried that humans might disrupt the established order. Ethan knew these whispers would grow, but he was undeterred. A week later, a security breach shook the embassy. A small group of mercenaries from a rival system had attempted to infiltrate the complex, hoping to test Ethan, or perhaps to prove that humans could be defeated. They were skilled, armed with advanced technology, and moved with the confidence of those who expected easy victory. Ethan had anticipated this possibility. He moved calmly, assessing the intruders' strategy, predicting their movements before they acted. With minimal force, he incapacitated them, using techniques that combined human agility with instinctive understanding of mechanics. The aliens around him watched in amazement. They had expected chaos, but Ethan controlled the situation with quiet precision. Lyra, witnessing the scene, felt a mixture of relief and awe. "You're not just surviving, you're shaping how the galaxy will see humans." Ethan nodded. "It's not about proving anything to them. It's about survival and protecting those who rely on me." The incident made waves throughout the galaxy. Alien intelligence networks reported that the human, Ethan, had neutralized multiple intruders alone, using minimal resources. Observers were stunned. Humans had survived countless crises on Earth, yes, but none had faced alien mercenaries, let alone succeeded with such efficiency. The council convened an emergency session discussing the implications. Krylos was present, his expression serious. "The human is unlike anything we've encountered," he said. "His strength is not brute force, nor is it purely skill. It is intelligence, intuition, and adaptability combined. He is beyond what we expected." Some members of the council murmured in concern. Others, more conservative, suggested limiting Ethan's influence. They had underestimated humans for centuries, and now they faced a reality they could not ignore. Ethan did not seek power or recognition. His actions were always deliberate, measured, and practical. Yet the perception of humans began to shift. Allies began consulting him, seeking his insight. Even skeptics treated him with a cautious respect, unsure whether to challenge or follow. Lyra and Ethan spent evenings discussing strategy and observation. They realized that the galaxy's perception of humans could not remain the same. Each success, each display of capability, created ripple effects that altered alliances, negotiations, and even security protocols. Humans, once dismissed, were now a factor others had to consider. One evening, as they watched the stars, Lyra said softly, "You've changed everything. Do you understand what that means?" Ethan's eyes, steady and calm, focused on a distant star. "Yes, but it also means more responsibility. Humans are now noticed, and some will want to challenge us. That's the way of the galaxy. Survival demands vigilance, preparation, and action when necessary." Lyra leaned closer. "Do you ever feel fear?" Ethan shook his head. "Fear is natural, but I don't let it control me." "Humans face fear all the time. It's how we respond that defines us." Their quiet reflection was interrupted by a sudden alert. Sensors had detected an unknown vessel approaching the embassy. Unlike previous incidents, this vessel was large, heavily armed, and moving with deliberate precision. Ethan immediately assessed the situation, analyzing its trajectory, possible weapon systems, and likely intentions. Lyra's eyes widened. "This is no ordinary test," she whispered. "They're coming for you or for humans in general." Ethan remained calm. "Then we prepare, observation, prediction, and action, that's all we need." As the vessel drew closer, alien security forces scrambled, preparing defenses and protocols. Ethan coordinated with them, not through command, but through subtle guidance, pointing out weaknesses in formation and suggesting strategies that the aliens had not considered. Slowly, the situation shifted. What had seemed overwhelming now had a chance of resolution. The vessel deployed smaller attack crafts, moving in a formation designed to encircle the embassy. Ethan observed their movements, predicting the pattern of attack and instructing the defenders on optimal positioning. Each decision was a calculated choice, combining human intuition with tactical awareness. The confrontation began, not with chaotic fire, but with precise, controlled actions. Ethan moved with speed and foresight, disabling several of the smaller crafts with minimal effort, using environmental factors to his advantage. The aliens around him watched in awe, realizing that humans, underestimated for centuries, could rival even the most advanced technologies and tactics. Lyra followed him through the corridors, her hand on his arm. "You're not just protecting us, you're showing the galaxy what humans can do." Ethan's expression remained calm. "I'm protecting what's important. If others recognize strength along the way, that's a consequence, not the goal." The attackers eventually retreated, confused and battered. Their superior numbers and firepower had been negated by Ethan's strategy and adaptability. The galaxy, once confident in its understanding of human limitations, was forced to reconsider. In the aftermath, the Council held an emergency session to review the incident. Krylos was present, his respect for Ethan evident, though his expression carried caution. "This human," he said, "has shown not just skill but the ability to anticipate, adapt, and overcome. He is unlike any species we have encountered. Humans are not to be underestimated." Ethan remained silent, observing the Council's reactions. He had not sought recognition, but acknowledgement was inevitable. His actions had changed perceptions, altered power dynamics, and forced aliens to rethink their assumptions about humanity. Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice soft. "You've done it again. They can't ignore humans now." Ethan looked toward the stars, calm and focused. "No, they can't, and they will learn to respect us, or they will face the consequences. That is the reality humans have always lived with." As night fell, the embassy hummed with quiet activity. Aliens debated the implications of the attack, security protocols were adjusted, and intelligence networks updated their reports. Humans, once considered fragile and predictable, had demonstrated resilience, adaptability, and strategic brilliance. Ethan stood on the balcony, Lyra beside him. "The galaxy is changing," she said softly. "Yes," he replied, "and humans are rising with it." In that moment, under the glow of distant stars, they understood the truth. Humanity was no longer a curiosity. Humans were a force, unanticipated, underestimated, and now undeniable. The galaxy had witnessed only a fraction of what they were capable of, and the future promised even greater demonstrations of strength, intellect, and ingenuity. And as Ethan looked out over the horizon, he knew that the time had come to show the galaxy that humans were not merely survivors. They were leaders, innovators, and a force that even the most advanced civilizations would have to respect. The galaxy had changed. Not because of treaties, technology, or diplomacy alone, but because of a human. Ethan of Earth, ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in capability, had altered perceptions and shifted the balance of power. Everywhere he went, aliens whispered his name, some in awe, others in fear. The embassy had become a hub of attention. Delegations from distant star systems requested meetings, eager to observe the human who had outmaneuvered generals, solved impossible problems, and defended the embassy from advanced attackers. The Zarian Council, once skeptical, now treated Ethan with cautious respect, even deference. And yet there was tension beneath the surface. Some feared what humans might do next. Ethan walked through the grand hall with Lyra beside him. She moved with her usual grace, but her silver skin seemed to shimmer brighter than ever, reflecting the pride and admiration she felt. "Do you realize what you've started?" she asked quietly. Ethan glanced at her, calm and composed. "I've shown them humans are not weak. That's all. What comes next is up to them." The council had summoned him for an urgent session. Reports indicated that multiple systems had altered their strategic and diplomatic plans based on Ethan's previous actions. The ripple effects of his intelligence, adaptability, and skill were now undeniable. As Ethan entered the council chamber, all eyes turned to him. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy were present, representatives from militaries, trade alliances, and scientific boards. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Some were curious, some skeptical, and some openly fearful. Krylos, the general who had dueled him weeks earlier, stood at the side. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed cautious respect. Ethan nodded politely. "General," he said simply. Krylos inclined his head. "Human, the galaxy watches you with growing interest." The session began with discussions on interstellar security, alliances, and the future of human integration into the galactic community. Ethan listened, observing each delegate, noting subtleties in posture, hesitation, and eye movement, details that revealed intentions, biases, and weaknesses. When asked for his opinion on the deployment of defensive fleets in vulnerable systems, Ethan responded with clarity and precision. He proposed strategies that combined human intuition with alien technology, emphasizing flexibility, adaptability, and foresight. Delegates whispered among themselves. No one had expected a human to produce solutions this comprehensive and effective. Lyra watched him, awe in her eyes. "You're not just participating," she whispered. "You're leading." Ethan's focus remained steady. "I'm suggesting solutions based on logic and survival. That's all humans do. They adapt to what is needed." The council debated his proposals, some resistant, some impressed. Yet Ethan remained calm, answering every question, addressing every concern, and gently guiding discussions toward efficiency and collaboration. By the session's end, even the most skeptical delegates acknowledged the value of his input. Outside the chamber, Ethan was met with curiosity and cautious greetings. He moved among the crowds, offering advice, answering questions, and subtly teaching the aliens to consider new perspectives. With each interaction, he reshaped perceptions. Humans were no longer fragile observers. They were contributors, strategists, and innovators. News of his influence spread rapidly. Alien societies, previously dismissive of humanity, began to recognize the species' potential. Trade negotiations shifted, security protocols were reevaluated, and alliances were reconsidered. Humans, once outsiders, were now a key factor in galactic planning. Despite these achievements, Ethan remained grounded. He had no desire for fame or power. Every decision he made was guided by practicality, survival, and a sense of responsibility toward humans and Lyra. One evening, as they observed the stars from the embassy balcony, Lyra spoke softly. "Ethan, the galaxy fears what humans can do, but it also respects you. You've done more in weeks than most species accomplish in centuries." Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady. "It's not about me. It's about showing what humans are capable of. If they see humans as strong, adaptable, and intelligent, it changes the way they treat us, and that benefits everyone we care about." Lyra nodded, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "And you've done it without seeking glory. That's what makes it extraordinary." The following weeks brought a series of unexpected events. A coalition of neighboring systems faced a critical threat. A rogue artificial intelligence had taken control of multiple orbital defense stations. The situation was complex and dangerous, requiring strategic thinking, coordination, and rapid adaptation. The Council turned to Ethan. If humans were now part of the galactic equation, they needed to prove their worth. Ethan accepted not for recognition, but because lives were at stake. He studied the situation meticulously, noting patterns, vulnerabilities, and potential consequences. Ethan devised a plan that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. He coordinated fleet movements, optimized resource allocation, and predicted enemy AI responses with incredible precision. His strategies were unconventional, relying on intuition, logic, and the ability to see connections others overlooked. As the operation unfolded, aliens watched in amazement. Human decisions, guided by observation and adaptability, neutralized threats efficiently, saving lives and stabilizing the situation. Even Krylos, standing beside the council, nodded in acknowledgement of Ethan's brilliance. When the threat was neutralized, the council convened to discuss the outcomes. Ethan had not only solved the crisis, but had done so in a way that demonstrated human ingenuity, adaptability, and leadership. Aliens who once dismissed humanity now regarded it with respect, understanding that humans could influence the galaxy in ways previously unimagined. Lyra approached Ethan after the session. "They respect you, yes, but they also fear you. You've changed the galaxy and there's no going back." Ethan smiled faintly. "I've only shown what humans are capable of. The rest is up to them. If they choose cooperation, humanity thrives. If they choose hostility, well, we'll be ready." The galaxy began to adjust. Human representatives were invited to participate in councils, consult on strategy, and contribute to interstellar projects. Knowledge of human capabilities spread across star systems. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were respected allies, valued for intelligence, creativity, and adaptability. Ethan and Lyra continued to work together, navigating political, strategic, and social challenges. Each day brought new opportunities and new obstacles. But they faced them with confidence, knowing that humans had proven their worth and that the universe was beginning to see them in a new light. One evening, as the stars shimmered above the embassy, Lyra leaned against Ethan. "Do you ever wonder how different it would have been if we hadn't met? If humans remained unnoticed?" Ethan considered her question, eyes on the distant horizon. "Perhaps humanity would still be underestimated. Perhaps some opportunities would have been lost. But now the galaxy knows. Humans have a place here and will continue to prove it." Lyra smiled, admiration and affection in her gaze. "And you did it without fighting for recognition. You've simply shown what humans are capable of." Ethan nodded, calm and steady. "Humans survive, adapt, and rise when needed. That's what I've done, and we will continue to do it, not for pride, but because it is necessary." As the weeks passed, the influence of humans continued to grow. Aliens consulted them on scientific projects, military strategies, and interstellar exploration. Humans, once overlooked, became a key part of galactic society. Ethan's example had opened the door, but the species itself would continue to rise, guided by adaptability, intelligence, and the natural resilience that had allowed humans to survive and thrive on Earth. Lyra and Ethan stood together on the balcony one night, observing the stars. "The galaxy has changed," she said softly. "Yes," Ethan replied, "and humanity has changed it, not by conquest, not by force, but by showing that we are capable of more than anyone expected. We are observers, thinkers, and survivors, and now the galaxy must recognize that humans are a force to be reckoned with." The stars above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the new reality. Humans were no longer dismissed. They were no longer underestimated. They were recognized, respected, and perhaps feared, but most importantly, they had earned a place among the stars. Ethan looked at Lyra, calm and determined. "This is only the beginning. Humans will continue to grow, to adapt, to rise. And the galaxy will see what we are truly capable of." Lyra smiled, her heart full of pride. "And we'll face it together as partners, as allies, and as humans who refuse to be underestimated." The future was vast, uncertain, and full of challenges. But for the first time, humanity faced it not as observers, but as participants, respected, capable, and unstoppable. And with Ethan leading by example, aliens everywhere would learn that humans were not just survivors. They were a force the galaxy could never ignore. As the two watched the stars, calm and unafraid, the universe began to acknowledge a new truth. Humans, underestimated for centuries, had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again.